Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 17th, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating, and Ralph Kohler is also here. If we're lucky, one or two more people might join us. Um, but we're going to return to issue 3370326. Um, sorry. Refine labels and descriptions for field types. And we're going to pick up the discussion where we left it off at the last meeting. So for anyone watching the recording, if you want the context of our discussion, please look at the start of last week's meeting. So I copied the comment from the usability meeting to the issue. And we're going through this list and just doing some wordsmithing. Last time we got as far as media. But I want to back up a little bit and talk more about telephone number. Um, so here, let me from the add field screen, or rather from the list of fields. If we click on create new field, we have all these options. One of them is telephone number. I meant to highlight it. I didn't want to select it. Telephone number, and the description is store a telephone number. Now, store is redundant. Every field type is storing data. And if you strip out the redundant part, you get telephone number, which is also redundant. It's not adding anything to the label. So what I proposed on Slack last week um, was a telephone number stored as a simple string. And I think that's conveying useful information to someone who's trying to decide what sort of field to use. You might think, given Drupal's dedication to structured data, that it would split off the country code into one field, subfield, and the area code into another, and then you'd be able to format it however you like. But in fact, it just stores the telephone number as a string. On my test site, I've added a telephone number field to the basic page content type, and I entered all of these options, and it it just gives you the option of outputting it as a link or not, but it doesn't split up the numbers in any way. Some people like to use dots, maybe because they think that IP addresses are cool, and they want their phone numbers to look like IP addresses. And just whatever I type in there gets saved. There's probably some validation. I don't think I can type in a poem and have it saved as a phone number, but
But
maybe.
aren't characters allowed in English in American phone numbers?
You mean alphabetic
Yeah.
characters? I'm not sure. Uh, what did I accidentally click on? I clicked on delete. Wanted to click on edit. Um, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, maybe there's not much validation. I don't know. Um, so saying that it's stored as a string um, sort of tells you how it is stored and implicitly tells you that it's not stored as more atomic data. So I think that's useful information.
Yeah.
Do you want to do any wordsmithing on this? Do we
Um,
need the
the
word simple?
yeah, about the word simple, it's the only thing. One idea, because on the text fields we have plain text field, and maybe instead of simple go with plain. That basically illustrates like plain text fields. You also have nothing else. It's just a string. And using the same word here might be a helpful association.
Um, so plain text means without formatting. Um, let's see what happens if I put in bold. I guess it is treated like plain text, and HTML tags are escaped. Okay, so let's make it plain rather than simple.
Because with simple, that raises the question, what does simple mean in that context? And are there different strings as well that are not simple? So anyway, just let's go ahead.
Putting it into the Zoom chat. Okay, and now we can go back to media we dealt with last time, so date and time. Um, so I'm going to rearrange my tabs a bit here. And what we currently have, I think on the next screen, I think it's this first one, date time, human readable string format, input requires date, and an example 2001-01-14, T00, colon 00, colon 00. Um, and DWW's comment was, this is called a date time, but input requires date. That's confusing. Plus the example shows a time. What value is input requires date adding here? Less is more, remove it. And if I remember correctly from our previous discussion, you, by experimentation, we found that you had to include a date. Um, you could not have just a time.
Um,
Um, Go ahead.
just one thing I've just noticed comparing, and I was a bit stumbled. Could you please go to the extend page and also activate the date time range? Because
Um,
that one is missing here.
okay, let me do it in my terminal window using Drush.
Yeah, just for consistency reasons, because on date time range, we have two date time values, start and end, and don't have the input requires, for example.
Um, so I'd like to keep this information that it requires a date, but
Yeah.
maybe we could have a second example where it's just a date and not a time because the time is not a required field.
But 1 second, I just checking. Timestamp 10, 17:55. Is it 12 p.m.? Because if you could you basically create a datetime field on that content type and simply test to create an a entity?
Sure.
Because I get basically when I try to save and only enter the date, then I get the date is invalid. Enter a date in the correct format. And both the date and the time is outlined.
So I have an option for date and time and an option for date only. So
Yep.
which do you want me to choose?
I went with the default date and time.
Okay.
So yeah, that is probably then the reason, but I think should that be reflected in that bullet points?
Perhaps. So let's go back here and oh, I also have to okay, I can edit my page.
I was confused for a second why you went into layout builder, but then I realized you're a new mommy.
Yes. So here's primary phone.
Yep, date and time.
This is Drupal's birthday, right?
Is it? Okay.
I think that's why we choose it for the examples.
Ah, okay.
Shall I try that?
Yeah, just save that.
Okay, so if I choose the default, which is date and time, then I'm required to enter something for the time.
Yeah. And basically, that's basically from a communication standpoint confusing because you don't have a required star at least for the entire field. And you just have those two fields. And you might consider, hey, I could just enter the date or just enter the time. There's no guidance or context provided. So probably out of scope then for the issue,
Yes. Um,
but I mean, just the input requires date, aside the fact Derek raised, is in general problematic, I think, because you can't make the general statement that input requires date. That is, strictly speaking, wrong.
so what if we say something like, um, choose either date or date plus time?
or I would say date and time, to use the same option micro copy like on the field. But yeah, aside that, I agree.
Okay, so choose either. I'll put that into the Zoom chat. Date or date and time. I guess we don't use ending punctuation on these.
Either date or date and time. Um, choose. 1 second, I have to go into the. Yeah, on the field settings, it uses also choose. So yeah. Yep, great.
And then let's change, instead of a single example, give two examples, one of which is just a date. Um, not use zeros for the time, but maybe 0900. Why not?
That one is the second example. Or would it make sense if we do a second example, then I okay. With the text wrapping, I misread it. Okay,
All
so a
right,
single. Yeah, agreed.
ready?
Um,
Go ahead.
should we align the date time range to the change to the date time? Because at the moment we have datetime values start and end. But on if you go on the field settings for the datetime range, you also have that same similar option. Let's say you have the options date and time, date only, and all day.
So let's try to get through the list of DW's comments.
Yeah, I
Um,
just thought to make it consistent, if you make a change here on datetime and datetime range is, yeah, but yeah, let's go ahead first, Derek's. Okay, datetime is done. Next would be plain text, long text.
and
That
this
I would
comment does.
consider.
I thought we're generally moving away from a body field and core. Do we even need this line at all? This option is labeled long text. Doesn't that imply it's recommended for long text? Um, so what was it again? Plain text, long text.
We could simply strike the like body.
And that would probably satisfy DWW.
Yeah.
Although he says this option is labeled long text, doesn't that imply it's recommended for long text? So if we strike like body, then we're saying recommended for longer texts. We're not adding anything to the label. So we might as well remove that bullet point.
But or add a text, let add the word text or prepend it to body so that you say recommended for longer text like text body. Though it's not about the body field, but basically the body. Because if we strike now recommended for longer texts like body, then you still have short text with recommended for titles and names. So have a recommendation on one and none on the other. I'm not sure.
In fact, long plain text is a pretty uncommon choice.
Yeah.
If we're going to allow long text, we usually allow some formatting. Um, but it would be nice to have some sort of recommendation.
But what would be an example? Because body is also not very specific. While for short text you have title or name, that rings a bell for a reader. But if I ask myself when should I use a long text, and as you've said, or maybe instead of recommended for longer text like body, go with recommended for longer text without any formatting. Or that avoid formatting. That should avoid formatting, something like that.
How about instead of recommended for, we say you use for longer texts that don't require formatting.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Because we have a hard time to give even an example where you use something like that.
So like that, use for
Yeah,
longer text without formatting.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, on to the next.
Yeah, number integer.
Um, so let's have a look at it. Um, number examples, and we intentionally chose pi as an example
Yeah,
as the differentiator, how you can represent pi as an integer. Best you can do is 3. How you can represent it as a decimal. And DWW's comment is that 3 is not equal to pi. This is a weird example. So as a mathematician, I would say that 3.1415926542653 is also not equal to pi.
exactly. What's the term in English? Well,
It's an approximation.
approximation was the term, exactly. Yeah.
Isn't the second line, values are positive, negative, or 0, a definition of the first? And is that what we have here? And perhaps it is. And I guess DWW and you got into some discussion looking up definitions. Are these whole numbers? Are these integers? Um,
Yeah. DWW said all numbers defined as a positive integer or zero. Negative integers are not whole numbers. This new help text is definitely wrong. And I've looked up in another lexica, and the suggestion there was number without decimal parts or fractions. But I guess you are the most proficient person to judge which definition would be the appropriate one here.
well, as, as a mathematician, I can tell you what's technically correct, but that's not necessarily what's most helpful to someone trying to decide.
Yep.
So I guess he's correct. Excuse me. Integer is the technically correct term that allows positive, negative, or zero. We could just drop the whole numbers bullet point. Excuse me, I just drank some water and it went down the wrong way.
Oh,
We could just drop the bullet point whole numbers, or we could replace it with your suggestion, number without decimal parts or fractions. Um, and I'm inclined to go with your suggestion.
and keep the values are positive, negatives, or zero afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah. That way we are sort of explicit and trying to describe what an integer is, because for someone not savvy with programming or math, either or, might have a hard time to grasp the concept of integer. So to outline that is a good idea from my perspective.
Yep.
Okay, next would be underneath with number float. Uh, wait a second, number float. That was dropped, isn't it?
Right. Um, and my notes say that we have to remove this line from floatitem.php, which I think I have open in my text editor. Um, I have several things open in my text editor.
Yeah, but float was dropped anyway, and that's the point Derek raised is the point we made with only limits provided by the system. That also the lean coffee table attendees also raised as a question back then, but then we dropped it after the thing was removed. So oh, but does it mean if that line would be removed, that field would be shown again?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was completely removed. Okay.
No, the field is still there. It just has this extra line saying don't show it in the user interface.
It is odd.
Yes, it is. And where were we?
With
Number
number
float.
float. Oh, yeah, okay. Um,
I don't know what only limits provided by the system means, using either new nor old eyes. So our point was that Drupal doesn't impose any restrictions on the size of the float or the accuracy.
yeah, the
Um,
limitation is based on the database system which is used. Should we maybe simply add only limits provided by the database instead of the system?
are you sure it's the database?
Oh, could it also be the web server?
Might be.
And instead of system, then only limits provided by the servers the site is installed or is using, something like that.
How about something like um, accuracy is limited by the database, or accuracy depends on database limitations.
Would be fine with me. If it's only the database, which is the limiting factor, and the PHP or operating system has no influence on that, then would be fine with me.
Yeah, how about that? Accuracy depends on limitations from database, comma, PHP. Limitations or limits?
Accuracy depends on limitations. Maybe instead of a comma, use an and or an and.
Like that?
Yeah,
And I changed limitations to limits.
yeah. I have no strong opinion either way with limits or limitation.
Okay, shall we try that?
Yeah, looks fine with me.
On to the next.
On, yep, reference.
Yes. Um, so change field type,
Is it possible to
reference.
see that in the UI at all?
Only if you do a little hacking, but I'm prepared
Okay,
to do that.
okay.
Um, and his comment is, I know we don't know what at item will be, but a paren and close paren is a bit awkward. Again, not sure what to suggest. So here, each um, entity type, we're not going to use that in the UI, but technically that's what it is. Each entity type that says, I want to be listed on this page provides a description. Now I'm going to go back to my text editor. Um, and here we go. I'm just going to delete some lines and I'll clear caches again. I'll reload this page and then create a new field, reference, and so I'm getting this by hacking core, but possibly a contrib module would do something similar where it says, yes, I want to include
Hmm.
my entity type on this list, but I'm not going to bother with a description. Then you get this default description, a reference to a A or N taxonomy term. And if uh, if the short description started with a vowel, then we would want N. Since it starts with a consonant, we'd like to use A. So my first thought is that this is such an outlier situation. This should not come up, that we shouldn't worry about it too much.
Um, Back then, when we did all the wordsmithing and the word microcopy work, we haven't touched that string. That was not discussed yet. So that is probably a previous string. But I
Oh, yes.
wonder,
The previous doesn't, it has no customization at all for the particular entity type. And the previous one was an entity field containing an entity reference.
oh, then we have touched it. Okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember at all. But would it work to make it less awkward, but not that accurate? Instead of A as being an unspecific, use a specific. So a reference to the add item. That way we would bypass the problem between A and N.
Oh, there is no the taxonomy term. There are many taxonomy terms, and we give a reference to one of them. So I think the
Okay.
indefinite article A or N is
Hmm.
correct.
Okay. Fair point. Hmm.
Now, we might rearrange things and instead of a reference to taxonomy term, we said taxonomy term references. Um, Although not exactly that, because I'm not sure that we can get taxonomy term to be capitalized if we put it at the start of a sentence. Um, I'm inclined to go with my first response, which is that this is good enough given how rarely it will be seen.
Yeah.
And in the absence of a positive alternative, I'm inclined to leave it as it is.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay.
Because yeah, my suggestions I raised don't make much sense. So yeah.
All right. So reference other, and we are getting so close to the end of the list, and we still have 15 minutes left.
Yay.
Reference other, choose from all available options on the next screen. Any content or configuration entity could be referenced. And I think he's objecting to the phrase configuration entity.
Yeah.
Um, what is a configuration entity? Not sure what to suggest here. So we came upon that by experimentation. Um, and maybe I will go on to the next screen.
Yep. Yeah, and if you go into type of item, then configuration.
Configure. Um, so maybe he's right, and we shouldn't use configuration entity because that's a backend developer's term. Um, configuration item.
Uh, But is configuration item much better? And could you reference an item? Because it is an entity. And you also use the concept of a content entity as well. So use content entity in one part and content item in the other.
Well, we say content or configuration entity. We could just as easily say content or configuration item. In fact, if I do the same hack
Hmm.
to node that I did to taxonomy, content item is the default way to refer to a node in the
Oh,
user
okay.
interface. Um,
Content. So many synonyms.
yeah,
Uh,
could we just remove the word entity? Any content or configuration could be referenced, can be referenced.
yeah, make it can. Any content or configuration can be referenced. Yeah, agreed.
And just drop the word entity.
Yeah,
On to the next.
yep. Because item I would consider confusing, even though you've showed me the example right now, but still adding more terms to the same concept makes things even worse. So removing it is the better choice.
Okay.
Email is the last one.
Yay. An email address with an output link option. And it's the same objection as for telephone.
Exactly.
I know we're attempting to be terse, but trying to put on my new eyes, I'm not sure I don't understand what an output link option is. So what did we decide? Um,
We've dropped the output link option on.
right. And we decided to go with the telephone number stored as a string. We dropped the word simple, right?
We used plain instead.
Ah, plain. Yes.
A telephone number stored as a plain string was the thing we've ended up with.
So shall we do the same thing for email?
Yep.
Email and Drupal standards say don't hyphenate email, although that's my personal preference. An email address. I think, stored as a plain
Ace.
string.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can update the merge request later tonight. I have now 2 meetings in a row, but after that I can do it quickly.
Okay.
And I can also cut the video.
Yep.
Um, and
And
then
since I've been putting things in the Zoom chat, I usually don't save the text version of the Zoom chat, but I can do that. Um,
I've already copied over all the strings and also did a additional save chat. So I've both.
okay.
So everything is stored. Um, in regards of the merge request, after I've made the changes, I could set is the issue still at needs review or needs work? Needs work. And then I set it back to needs review and I ping Derek and give him a heads up so he
Yes.
can chime in
Uh-huh.
and review the changes again, because his points were definitely good. He's raised, so that was a real good input. And oh, one thing, what is his name again? Clayton in
Uh-huh.
comment number 70. The persons from the Drupal Camp Colorado Contrib Day, um, to provide credit to them for Clayton as well as Matthews, Travis, and Timur Trip or whatever. That was the only group exercise that is missing credits so far.
Okay, I can take care of that. Here we go.
Yeah, that one, exactly. Him and Matthews, Travis, and Tim U Trip.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, and you'll see anyway when I set it back to needs review and could also chime in case. Okie doke. And one thing, the synonym stuff you've raised with that item, and I was completely unaware, but um, I'm currently going through that coursework for OUX, and synonyms are a fundamental part of that, and trying to avoid them. And as I've mentioned a few weeks ago, I also plan, if I have the time and get to it, also do a brief introduction to OOUX during a usability meeting, because the methodologies there could be really, really handy, in particular for that the thing Aaron raised a few months ago with that deep nest and that deep, was it nesting or how he called it, meaning the contextual navigation. And to get to that, and also in context of Drupalisms, all that could be combined and taken care of with OOUX.
Yeah, I'd love to have a summary of what OOUX is about.
Yeah,
And we can afford to have a meeting that's a little different from our usual meetings.
yeah. But I need a bit of preparation, prepare basically a presentation, and currently I'm roughly 2 weeks behind with assignments for that course, because I've picked the design challenge that is the most challenging one, and it took me roughly 2 additional weeks to fully think through that with the relationships and cardinality between the objects, and that is was excuse my French or pardon my French, how it's called. It's a brain fuck between context and scope, and yeah. Anyway, but OOUX is a really strategic framework, and in particular for documenting everything and making informed decisions, and more importantly, to understand things. And yeah, I'll do a summary and a brief intro, and then we'll see. But in particular for Drupalisms, I consider those objects and those definitions fundamentally important and mandatory.
Okay.
Okay, doc. Anyway, have a relaxed weekend, I would say.
Thank you. You too.
And we are through with the issue. Yay. I haven't thought we would make it, to be honest, in time. Okay, doc. Then we'll read on Slack.
Yes. And and tomorrow I should have some time to look over the changes you've made to the merge request.
Yep, excellent. Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
doc. And
Um,
bye-bye. Yep.
I won't be here next week, but hopefully soon.
No pressure. When you have time and energy capacity, then happy if you're here. And if not, I'll take care of facilitating.
Thank you.
And hopefully people are there, others. So
Hopefully.
anyway, bye-bye.
Bye.